You thought it was just a crush, a fleeting attachment. You thought it was all in your head, that it would disappear over time. And yet, the signs don't stop. You pray, you doubt, you run away, but the universe continues to whisper their name into your daily life. Why does this person always come back, even when you turn the page? What if this connection you feel isn't an illusion, but divine guidance? It's not just a love story. Perhaps it's a reminder from Allah. And until you understand this message, these signs will never stop. 1. The restless heart that can't let go. You've tried everything, haven't you? You've changed your habits. You've deleted their name from your phone. You've pretended to move on. And most importantly, you've raised your hands. You've asked Allah to remove this bond from your heart, to erase it, to purify it. But despite everything, it's still there. Discreet, silent, but present. Every silence becomes a trace of them. Every time you're alone, when the world sleeps and your soul awakens a little more, this person returns. Not always painfully. Sometimes just like a soft light in the back of your mind. You don't want to cling to them, but you can't let go. And the more you struggle, the stronger the bond seems to grow. So you doubt yourself. You judge yourself. You tell yourself it's your nafs, your ego, your unhealthy attachment. You tell yourself it's a dangerous illusion. You've even begun to believe your own heart is betraying you. But what if it wasn't a weakness? What if it wasn't a poison, but a passage? You see, there are attachments born of disobedience, yes. But there are others that raise as reminders. You didn't seek anything out. You didn't provoke this sensation. It came by itself, like a seed that wasn't planted, but grew in a secret corner of your soul. And ever since, it's been there. Not as an obsession, but as a direction you don't yet understand. And in this confusion, you did what few do. You questioned your Creator. You sought to understand what He wanted to show you through this connection. You didn't seek to possess this person. You sought to free yourself from a burden you don't know how to interpret. And if this feeling persists, it's perhaps not because you haven't tried hard enough to forget it. It's perhaps because there's still something you need to hear. You know, Allah never leaves a soul in turmoil without reason. If He placed a name, a face, a presence in your heart. If He brought this person into your life in a way that left a lasting impression on you. If He allowed this connection to survive so many silences, so many breakups, so many nights of prayer and separation. It's perhaps because this connection was never a mere coincidence. But you're afraid. You're afraid of misinterpreting it. Afraid of clinging to an illusion. Afraid of calling a sign what could just be your imagination. And yet, in this inner turmoil, you sense something pure. A sincere desire for answers. A need to align your heart with Allah's will. You're not looking for love. You're looking for meaning. You don't just want to be with this person. You want to know why your soul was awakened by their contact. Why this connection has moved you so deeply. And this is where a truth begins that few dare to accept. What you feel may not be there to be fought, but to be listened to. Not to distract you from the spiritual path, but to force you to delve deeper into it. There are feelings that Allah places in your heart to test you, but there are others that He plans to instruct you. What if this connection, however confusing, were a mirror? A mirror that forces you to look at yourself differently, to probe your intention, to purify your faith, to understand that sometimes Allah doesn't respond by removing, but by leaving this burden until it becomes wisdom. You want it to stop. But maybe it's not the right time yet. Perhaps this connection shouldn't be erased. but transformed. And as long as you try to extinguish it without listening to it, it will return. Again and again. Not to torture you, but to invite you to see what you still refuse to understand. To the sky that changes when you think of her, him. You can't explain it. And yet, you experience it.
That strange moment when everything around you starts talking about her or him, without anyone saying their name. You're on the street, and a poster catches your eye. You hear a name on the radio. A song that seemed forgotten comes back to brush against your ear. Exactly at the moment your heart was sinking, the world, suddenly, seems in synchronicity with your inner silence. As if every detail of the setting has been subtly adjusted to remind you that this person has never truly left your field of vision. You make a sincere invocation, not to bring her back, not to possess her, just to understand. And a few moments later, a memory floods you. Her laughter, a sentence, a gesture that once brightened one of your dark days. And then, you stand there frozen, not because you're nostalgic, but because it's too specific, too sudden, too aligned with your prayer for you to still call it a coincidence. It's as if the sky were adjusting to your heart, as if the clouds themselves bore its image, discreet, blurred, but recognizable to your soul, as if the wind were whispering to you that something is still alive, even if everything seems over. You look around, but no one else seems to see. No one notices the repetition of these signs. And no one understands why this date on the calendar has upset you. Why this city, this scent, this word, have suddenly brought you back to it, without warning. It's as if the whole world has been programmed, just for you. As if Allah was sending you a secret language, an invisible grammar. Symbols encoded in the details, that only you can decipher. And no matter how hard you resist, no matter how hard you close your eyes, how hard you divert your thoughts, how hard you occupy your mind, the sky changes when you think of her. The air becomes different. Time slows down, and your whole being goes on alert, as if your soul recognizes a presence you can't see but feel. And you ask yourself, why now? Why again? Why here? But nothing answers you with words, only with feelings, shivers, silences that say too much, repetitions too precise to be the result of chance. You never asked for these reminders, but they come again and again, not in the din, in the interstices of your life, in those micro moments when you think you're alone, but the world suddenly seems to be staring right into your soul. And you realize that this bond isn't like the others. It's not a mental attachment. It's an imprint. Something that goes beyond memories. Something that leaves traces even in creation. As if Allah, in His knowledge that you cannot measure, had allowed certain things to vibrate to the exact rhythm of your heart. You don't know why, but you know it's not trivial. And you feel that until you understand what these signs mean, the sky will continue to change. Every time you think of her. 3. Is it my soul or a divine sign? What if I'm deluding myself? That's the first question that arises, like a reflex, like a defense. You're afraid of being naive, of being weak, of loving in the wrong place. You fear having built a world in your heart that no one else sees. What if it's just my heart clinging to it for no reason? But why then has your heart changed since then? Why did this thought make you want to become better? Why, instead of leading you astray, have you drawn closer? Why would Allah allow this confusion, if it's not just to lose me? But since when has confusion not been a step towards clarity? Since when has the agitation of a sincere heart not been a proof of divine listening? Really ask yourself this question. Did this person distance you from your Creator?
was it by thinking of them that you began to pray more deeply, with more tears than ever before? Was it by forgetting them that you found yourself? Or by crossing this bond that you rediscovered your need for truth, your need for guidance, your need for Allah? Perhaps it's not the person who is the goal, but the upheaval they caused, the inner awakening they triggered, the crack they opened for the light to enter. What if this sweet pain wasn't a punishment, but a disguised elevation? What if it wasn't attachment that needed to be fled, but the meaning that needed to be deciphered? Because there are bonds that devour you, but there are others that tear you away from your own spiritual laziness, that force you to question your faith, your heart, your intentions. Look at yourself. You didn't pray like this before. You didn't think like this. You'd never begged so much for your heart to be sincere, upright, protected. And you still believe it's nothing. You think Allah would have let you feel all this without purpose. You think He would have sent you this presence, this confusion, this light in the other's eyes, just to play with your heart. You didn't ask for this ordeal, but it transformed you. And if this bond had never been given to you, you might never have become the version of yourself you're discovering right now. So no, it's not a whim. It's not an illusion. Perhaps it's a passage, a bridge, not to the other, but to a depth within yourself you never suspected. And as long as you see this pain as a flaw, you'll be ashamed of it. But if you start seeing it as a call, then you'll start listening not with your ears, but with your soul. And then, everything changes. Because this connection you've been fighting for months could very well be a key. 4. The story you dare not tell anyone. There was that night. You told it to no one, perhaps because you knew no one would understand. Perhaps because it was too fragile to be put into words. You woke up without an alarm. The silence was heavy, almost sacred. And yet, your heart beat as if something were calling you. Not a dream, not a thought, not a fear, but a presence. You don't know why, but at that precise moment, it was that person who filled your mind. Not their face, not their name, but their vibration, the trace in your soul. You weren't thinking about them. It was deeper than that. It was as if something or someone had placed their memory in your heart without your permission. And it wasn't romantic. It wasn't passionate. It was something else. Something ancient, pure, quietly powerful. You even wondered if she was thinking about you, or worse, praying for you at that precise moment. And that's when you understood. This connection, it wasn't a game of the imagination. It wasn't an obsession or an ego projection. It was like an invisible line between two souls that recognize each other, even from a distance. You felt a strange peace, mixed with dizziness, as if a part of you had just picked up on a subtle wave that the rest of the world couldn't hear. Since that night, you don't see things the same way anymore. You experience her absences as familiar silences, her appearances as divine encounters. And no one knows that. No one knows this story you hide in your heart, not because you're ashamed of it, but because it's too sacred to be told without trivializing it. You've tried to move on. You've asked Allah to close that door, but every time you think you've forgotten it, something brings it back. A sentence, a night, a voice, a dream. You continue to live, you move forward, but you know this story isn't over. Not necessarily to be lived, but to be understood. And this understanding, it didn't come from the mind. It came from the depths, where souls converse, far from words, far from the world, far from time. You may never know why that night was the one that imposed itself on your heart. But you know one thing. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a simple memory. It was an echo, a gentle call, sent from a place unseen by the eyes. And ever since, you've carried this certainty without proof, but with a conviction that only Allah can place in a heart. You may not have understood the message, but you know there was one. And perhaps this video, now, this precise moment when you hear these words, is also part of the message. You don't have to chase after answers, but you must be aware enough to recognize when Allah is trying to speak to you through your heart. If this connection has brought you closer to Him, if it has transformed you internally, then perhaps it's not just attachment, it's guidance in the making. And if you're feeling this way right now, it's no coincidence that you stumbled upon this video. Subscribe now if you want more reminders like this. Not to make you dream, but to awaken you spiritually. And most importantly, share this video with someone who may also need to understand that some signs aren't coincidences, but divine invitations.